Hello, hi everybody. Brian here from quantlabs.net. This video is specifically for my Quant Analytics folks that want to secure their own virtual server through the Vultr service. I'm going to show you a virtual server that I've set with some ID logins, identity, profile, and a server IP. Don't get too excited because I'll be destroying that server after this video, so it won't exist. So what we're dealing with here is you get a virtual server spun up with everything pre-configured with some basic security, but I'm going to show you in this video how to improve the security with SSH. Hopefully you're a Linux user, and if not, what I would recommend is being a Windows user. What I would recommend, there are references to use a program called PuTTY. It might be better just to follow along with what I do and install a shell or what they call a WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux or something along that. But this video might help you. Basically, you can install any major Linux distribution into your Windows. So you can just follow this tutorial, how to install and enable WSL in Windows 10. And plus how to access files. So you can just do that instead of using PuTTY. But everyone else on Mac and Linux should be able to do this. Okay, so this is what we're doing, is that there's two halves to secure a virtual server. These are basics, but what I'm going to show you is the most secure for SSHing into your server, which is like shelling into it remotely. And then be able to run your commands in Linux in a command prompt or a terminal session remotely from your own desktop, preferably in a Linux terminal or a Linux-like terminal. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you some of the basics here. Also, if you're on Vultr, obviously you can do that through their console. That's part of your login process. I'll probably do another tutorial video on that. But in the meantime, this is what we do is we need to log into your environment. So you're going to find a pile of different terminals here. So essentially what we have here is this is my remote server for my virtual server. So in here, these are the IP right here. Okay, this is the user that you create. And this is the password, okay? So as I said, don't get excited because I'm sure there's going to be some dumb idiot out there trying to go, hey, Brian, this doesn't work, man. I can't log into your server. Well, believe me, I get those all the time. Anyways, what you're going to do is you need to log in as root. So here, as I said, I've got a root happening, right? So if you just follow these commands here. You can add a user, whatever your user is going to be. And that's a user you're going to SSH into using that user with the IP. Okay, when you create your Vultr account, you will get an IP identified with each virtual server that you create in your Vultr account. So here we do an add user, and then we do a user mod to change the user profile, so that we can sudo into it, so you can remote log into it with a not being, you can do root access like, but just do it from your own non-user account, which is probably a little safer. And just follow these. So these instructions are pretty good. There's a confusing section here in this document. So again, for those on the podcast, it's called Initial Secure Server Configuration of Ubuntu 18.04. Right now, they just upgraded to 20, so it's still Ubuntu. It should still work, obviously. And this is on Vultr. That's spelled VULTR.com. So continuing along, we can then, once we change this user mod, then we can SU. Now again, let's say in my case, I want to SU into my user I have here. So I've got this thing called utility user. And again, third time I'm saying this, this is not going to exist, this server I'm working on. Okay, Normally it should ask me for a password, but it will log in automatically because it has an authorized SSH key. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So you don't have to put in your password, and it's more secure actually. So what we got to do is we got to create a key. So there's another uh, page here on Vultr called "How do I generate SSH keys?" I'll put these all in the user tutorial in the back end of the Quant Analytics. Okay, so we're continuing along here. I was going to originally show you the keys and that, but obviously security, be concerned for that with these keys getting generated. So basically what we do is we got to make sure we can run SSH hyphen keygen with all these parameters. You can put your own comment in to identify it. And then from there, what we do, it will give you a key. Where it gets stored is in your user profile, your home under this .ssh IDRSS. Okay, and then there's a public and a private one. The private one sits on your local computer, and at the same time, you'll get a public one. So, yeah, so if you get this one, that is your private one. That stays on your computer, doesn't go anywhere. And then you have the a public one, this one, ID underscore RSA pub. And then out of that, it will generate all this fun stuff, and it's a fairly big key. Here's an example of it. Where is it? Yeah, it'd be something like this, SSH, and it's pretty long. I don't know how many characters, and then it has your comment that you want to identify that with. Again, you can do the same thing supposedly on Windows, so that's good. And then you're going to copy it somewhere into your clipboard, and then we're going to transport that into your remote server, which would be your Vultr server. Okay. Now in here, there's some interesting blurbage. You could use this program called Putty. But as I said, you might want to still run these commands here, okay, in Linux. But again, remember what I said. If you want to do that, you could probably do it by installing this WSL into your environment. Okay, let's see. There are some tips here I can give you. All right, so that's creating your SSH keys. So the next step is to copy over your keys to your remote server. Now, Vultr does give some tips here, like so under this, document your page called connect to a server using an SSH key. I didn't get this working, so you may want to try it. You may get it working. Depends, because I'm connecting into a Debian server, a Debian distro, and supposedly if you do Ubuntu, you shouldn't have a problem. But I'm doing Ubuntu, so some Linux distros may not work properly, just as a forewarning. Hi everybody, so I found this article that's better to play around with. It's on howtogeek.com. Name of the article here is How to Create and Install SSH Keys from the Linux Shell. So it's going to walk you through the exact same process. You can even just follow these commands wherever you are on your Linux or Mac or Windows. But in here, what we're going to do is when you SSH, I don't know if I've covered this, you're usually going to have your SSH command, your username, and your IP, which I just showed here being this the IP, okay? So all that good stuff. We have now a command here that you can use called SSH-copy ID. Let me repeat, SSH-copy ID. Okay, and then you log in like if you're SSH Hing in. And what it's going to do, it's going to transfer whatever is in your .ssh directory, and it'll move over the public version of that key onto the server. So, it'll come back with this output. One key remains to be installed. If you're prompted to do so, you'll have to put your password for the user. And then it'll just say that you had the key added to that remote server. So that happens now. If that's successful, you can then SSH in without having a password. The reason this is secure is because you're going to have a private key, and there's going to be a corresponding public key that you can put on other remote servers, and only you will have that key. This is like encryption, so it's very difficult for a hacker to log in without the private key, because you have the private key on your local system, and when you SSH into your remote server, you can do that. But as I said, if the hacker, whoever's trying it, doesn't have that private key, they can't log in. And it also makes it easier because you just SSH in, no password needed, and you're off to the races. So this is pretty good. Makes life a lot easier. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about that. And as I said, for Windows users, you can use the PuTTY command. I was going to do this on Mac, but without this how to geek command here, which was very easy actually, just to SSH copy ID, it would have been a disaster. Oh, now there are a couple of things we need to talk about when we configure this. Okay, in the SSH documents from Vultr, to make it more secure, what we got to do is, now that we have the ability to SSH in using an authorized key, we can then remove the configuration in the SSH server side on the remote server. And what we can do is we can disable that for extra security. So let me go through that here. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here. So we need to follow some of these commands still, but this is how we disable password authentication. This is really important to understand what I'm about to say. Once for sure you're able to SSH in with that user ID and no passwords needed from your private computer, you're good. Your SSH private key. You got to secure that key, because if you lose it, you cannot ever log into another into your remote server. So you have to secure that key, save it somewhere on another system or whatnot, because without that, you're going to lose the ability to remote in to your server. So as I said, make sure you keep that private key saved, and probably the public key as well. I just back it up, zip it and back it up, store it somewhere that you can trust. So with that, now what we're going to do is, once we know that's working, and during this whole process, I'd probably have what I have here, an SSH session open all the time with a nano, with your root session open at all times. So go through all these steps, but as a safety measure, I would just make sure you have a root access session open at the start of this, and once you're happy everything's working, then close out your root session, your root SSH session. So if you screw this up, what I'm about to show you, the same thing means, especially with one parameter, you may not be able to log into your server. So because I had that root access open, that SSH session open with root access, I was able to recover from what I'm about to tell you. So in order to disable the password authentication, you have to go to this file here called sshd_config. That can be found under etc or etc ssh. Okay, and I think you got to be root access to do this. So I'd have 2 root access sessions open. And what we're going to do is we're going to set these 3 um, as no. Well, actually, one, password authentication is no. This is the dangerous part. If you don't have a root access or a root SSH session open, and you change that and you log back in when you do change this to no, you're going to run into problems. Okay, you're going to run into a message of this. It's a public key message saying you can't log in. Yeah, I put this in the page, but it'll say exactly this: blah blah blah, permission denied, public key. Okay, and then you can't go anywhere. So as I said, in parallel, you want to have an SSH session open for your root user. Okay, very important, because if you don't do it and you screw up, as I said, you won't be able to log back into your remote server using SSH if you set this to no. So challenge response authentication is no, and public key authentication is yes. So you have to set that when you establish all the keys have been sent over, or the public key has been sent over using this command here that we've already talked about, the SSH copy ID. Okay, so with that in mind, that's a parameter setting of your SSHD_config. And once you save it, you can save it. And this will walk you through on how to do it with, let's say, Nano, the editor. On the command line, I'll also walk you through how to edit it with the right command key combos. Okay, so once that's complete, next step is to do system control reload SSHD to reset it. Now, just as a tip, which I ran into, is this may come up if you don't get it working. This guy at this article, at this page here, offered this solution. Let me just pull it up. Okay, so if you just look for that solution, that will help you recover. Let me just show you that. What's the guy's name? Yeah, right here, this one. So what you do is you nano over to your etc sshd_config and set these parameters. Now again, remember, this is all up to you. That's why I'm not gonna configure it. I don't know what the level of security you want. Do you want root access, the root user to log in? Yes. Okay, do that. But then your authorization keys for the SSH kind of defeats the purpose. So, you can set that to no for extra security, and also set this for no. But if you have your root access open via the SSH, then you can set this to no. But if you have problems, set this to yes, and then you're able to SSH back in without this permission denied public key. Because this permission denied is when you set this password authentication to no. Okay, so you got to kind of understand what you're going through. I'm going to be honest. If you have your virtual server, you have Vultr, there's 2 ways to go around it. You'll get your virtual server from me spun up. There's 2 ways to go around it. You might want to duplicate that server, have the original, and when you're adding this level of security, I would duplicate that server session, because you can do that with Vultr, and then start monkeying around with this stuff, what I'm talking about, in that new session, because if you mess around, at least you have the backup of the old uh, virtual server, and you're good to go if there's any problems. Or you modify with all these settings um, with the virtual server. You add in this password authentication, sorry, SSH authentication with the key working. You're happy with it. You keep and you secured your public and private key, as I said, and then you're happy with that, and everything's secured. And then what you can do is set everything to no, permit root login, no, password authentication, no. So hackers cannot now hack in to your remote server because they need to have the private and public key. And of course, don't give out your private key to anyone that you don't trust, and keep a backup of it. Okay, very important. So there you go. I think that's pretty well it from the configuration standpoint. And we'll leave it at that. I do have, let's see if I have the article open. Give me a second here. So here we are in my article. Again, this is behind my paywall for my Quant Analytics members. So you got to be a member to get access to this page. So I've gone through, left all the links here that I've covered in this video here, as well as the important SSH copy ID. You can always rewind and go from there. Hopefully this will be helpful for you. If not, I'll make more videos to make life easier for you. We'll leave it at that. And now we got to do the firewall. Talk to you later. Okay, so the service I'm talking about, for those that may not know, just come under my shop here at quantlabs.net/academy/shop. Look for the diamond, or sorry, for the light bulb here, Quant Analytics subscription, and that's what I'm referring to in the back end to help you secure your virtual server that you get, so that you can have all the pre-configured trading script and all the other fun stuff, which is pretty well, that's it. That's pretty well it. Thanks for watching. Have yourselves a good day and good luck. May the force be with you.